Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is Dr. Jessica Katanga and I am bringing back the Taboo series. And this is a series where we talk about medical conditions that are just not talked about enough. And I am joined by my friend Tanya. Say hello to the camera. And we're going to be talking about her experience with psychosis, being sectioned, and everything in between. I'm so excited for this conversation. Let's see a little bit of what we learned today. So if you just introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, I'm Tanya. I'm 26 years old, and over the years I've had different mental health issues, including anxiety and depression. But in 2018 I had my first episode of psychosis. Hopefully, as you can see, I'm all good and recovered now. So yeah, ready to get into the juicy bits.
Get into the juicy parts. So what I thought is I'll start off with like the medical definition of psychosis, and then I can ask you for your kind of like personal definition. Okay. So psychosis is where someone loses touch with reality. So they experience hallucinations, delusions, disorganized thoughts and speech, emotional dysregulation, and difficulty with social interactions. Psychosis is not a disorder in itself, it's a symptom, and it can be a symptom of many things. So maybe severe depression, bipolar, drug-induced, or schizophrenia, and more.
I feel like your definition does fit mine in terms of you just lose touch of reality. Through my research as well, I've learned that it's really different for everybody. So it can look different on different people and feel different on different people too.
Okay, so you said that it looks different for different people. How did it look for you? At what point did you like recognize or believe you were unwell? Like, tell us the story of how it led up to that.
The first time or the second time?
Whichever one you want to start off with. Let's start off with the first time, I guess.
Okay. Have I even actually ever told you this?
No, we haven't, because you said that we wanted to.
Oh, we're gonna save it.
Save it. Let's tell it in front of the camera.
Okay. I don't even remember. I was in a long distance relationship, and it was a very last minute decision. I had to go and visit. He was in a different place to where I had last seen him. So he wasn't in New York anymore. He was in this place called Block Island, which is an island just off of Rhode Island. And I think in the lead up to it, which I think is important to address, I was feeling very anxious. There was times when I was like, I don't think I should do this, I shouldn't go. But the plans was already in motion. Also, probably should mention, I had like a THC vape. Okay. Just helped my anxiety and stuff. So as time went on, I'd get very paranoid, but and I wasn't expressing it also, so a lot of it was just happening in my head, and I was like trying to like calm myself down. It became apparent to him when I started having panic attacks, but I didn't even realize that I was having panic attacks.
What were you panicking about? What were you paranoid about?
Like, I don't know. There are bits that I don't remember. Okay. It was almost like I had this whole conspiracy going on in my head. Okay. There's this show that we watched on Netflix, and I feel like somehow that got into my head without me realizing it.
Really?
And it was about this is why it's clear that it could have been getting to my head, because it was about this island that people go to as a party island. Wow. And then they get scammed. Yeah. So it actually makes sense why I've thought, oh, that's what's happening to me. Yeah. Small island. He was like, oh yeah, it's fine if we leave the doors unlocked. It's fine if you leave your stuff out. And I was like, oh, I would just never do that. So that also got me suspicious. The game that he was playing on his phone, because it was like live and I would hear voices coming through there, I started hearing those voices or thinking that they were talking about me. Yeah.
Your partner at the time, did you trust him?
I probably didn't.
So it was a mix of anxiety and distrust around the partner you had at the time, being in a foreign country, you're literally in America. Yeah. All this stimuli around you, the Netflix, the video games, and the THC, then the underlying anxiety, depression, and it was just a perfect cocktail for all of this to happen.
Yeah. But I remember sending my parents my location as like a signal to be like, I'm in danger, even though I actually wasn't. I just text my cousin like 911 or something. I just couldn't stop panicking, and then I just couldn't breathe. And then I think he said that he noticed I was about to choke on my tongue from how much I was panicking, but I still wasn't calming down. He called the medics, and then when the medics came, they didn't help. They just made the situation worse, because where they saw I was panicking, and I wasn't calming down, they just immediately started injecting me with stuff, like without really even speaking to me. So I just remember, like, without my consent, random injections going into my leg, and I don't know what they are either. But that's making me panic more, because I'm like, what's happening? They like carried me out, put me into an ambulance, and they wouldn't let him come with me either, because they thought, oh, what if there's some kind of domestic situation?
Okay.
They didn't even get me to the medical center. They just said, we're gonna put her in a helicopter and fly her to the mainland. And this is all without mine or his consent also. But and I think at that point when I was in the helicopter, whatever they had injected in me had kicked in, because I was like high as a kite then.
Okay.
And then the next thing I know, they moved me to like not a cell, but like a different ward, I guess. They wouldn't believe me when I said I was from London. No, I'm from London. They'll be like, okay, sweetie. And they held me there for a bit, and then they transported me to this like top level psych ward, and I didn't know where I was.
Wow. Okay, that is you know, I don't want to use any words like that's insane or that's crazy, but it's in like
it's a lot.
it is a lot.
Yeah.
It's a lot. And yeah, so you were already so scared and anxious and paranoid, and then the lack of communication from the healthcare professionals just, of course, heightened that. And that's good for you to say, because you know, my audience is half people in public and half healthcare professionals. So it's good that, you know, communication is key. Even if you think that somebody's not in their right mind, like, these are moments that they will remember forever. So then they put you to a high security psychiatric hospital, and you were in a psychiatric hospital, not even here in America.
Yeah.
And then so then now, were you sectioned there, or
what is it? What does it mean when you're sectioned?
Sectioned is when there's like, okay, so yeah, sectioning is when somebody's got, it's a piece of mental health legislation where you are holding somebody forcibly against their will in order to treat them for their mental health condition.
Oh, so I was sectioned.
What was it like being held against your will?
It was really confusing, because also I got caught in an endless cycle, because where they were, I would panic. Obviously my heart is beating fast, like blood pressure and stuff, everything is high, so then they try and calm me down with more drugs. So then they just keep injecting me, but then it's obviously only when they come up to me that I start panicking, which means they try to, so do you know what I mean? It's like a cycle. I thought, when they asked me, did you feel like your life was in danger, or did you feel like you were gonna die? I don't remember the specific question, but I was like, yes. So then from that, they thought I'm gonna hurt myself, so they put me on suicide watch. So I couldn't even like shower or go toilet without them being like, knock, knock, knock. But it was really invasive for me, because I'm like, I don't know where I am, and then I can't even go toilet.
Yeah, it's like all of it. Yeah, and you're, you know, independent 20-something-year-old woman. That's just not what you're used to at all.
Yeah.
But then from my perspective, it's like, you know, because I've been on a young female adult psych ward, so I see it from the other perspective, where it's like, but there are women who hurt themselves, so they do have to be on that one-to-one.
Yeah, no, I actually understand.
But then it's like, I think maybe they just took one thing that you said and maybe like ran with it.
Yeah.
And maybe if there had been, like, again, because one of the people have asked, like, what would you like staff to know in handling a crisis? It's seeming again like the communication. So like, don't just assume what I'm saying as the patient, actually communicate amongst yourselves together as well.
Yeah.
And maybe like reassess things as they go along, because maybe you need the injections at the start, but maybe you didn't need them going on, because that was actually, just as you're saying, fueling your anxiety further and stuff.
Like, obviously that's the American healthcare system. The second time I had psychosis, I experienced this system more.
Okay.
During COVID too, so it was different.
Okay. So what was it? What were the differences or the similarities?
I think it made a big difference that my parents were here.
Okay.
My dad is quite clued in, so he was able to communicate with the doctors. It was actually my dad that got me home the first time. He had to fly over.
Wow.
And speak to the doctors to convince them to let me out.
Yeah, how long were you in that American ward for?
It was a few days.
Okay.
It felt like a really long time, but it was less than a week.
Okay. And then when your dad got you out of there, then did you come straight to hospital here, or did you just go back to the community here?
I just came home.
Okay. And do you feel like you were still unwell at that time?
Yeah.
Okay. Did your parents know that you are unwell?
Yeah.
And were they trying to now just manage it by themselves, or
yeah.
What do you think about that? Was that helpful for you or not helpful?
I can't say what would have been best, because obviously it was really heavy on my parents, especially the second time. They were literally my carers. Like, the second time was a lot worse. There was times when my dad was having to force me to take medication. I wouldn't take it. Like, it's a big boundary that's crossed but without. Like, there's not really a choice. And it was hard for them to handle too because they're not medical professionals. So there's points where, they would lose their temper, or they wouldn't know how to handle it, or they would make it worse, because I think both times I wasn't sleeping.
Okay,
so someone would be up with me all the time.
Yeah.
So it did affect our relationship. At the same time, I'm so grateful because they just didn't want to put me back in a hospital after what I'd been through.
Yeah.
So I feel like, but having been through what I have been through, I wouldn't really advise it, like being looked after by a relative.
Okay.
Because I think a medical professional would have better boundaries.
Okay.
And would know how to deal with it. There was the option of having people come to the house, so there was like doctors coming, like I think every day, and then it slowed down to every other day and every week. It was like the crisis team.
Yeah.
So they would come to check in on me. So they wouldn't be the ones looking after me, but they would be there to monitor.
So we'll go back to family in a bit. The symptoms that we could summarize for you is not sleeping, the paranoia and the panic. You said auditory hallucinations.
The second time I did have visual hallucinations too.
Okay.
You see, there's like that. There's the back wall is garages, and I saw someone sitting on top of the garage smoking.
But couldn't somebody have been smoking on top of there?
No, you see why it's confusing?
Yeah.
It's confusing.
Because maybe for people at home, there's just like garages behind us, and I mean somebody could climb up to there, but no, you're saying it probably didn't happen, or did it?
I don't know.
It is mixed. It's like you're out of touch with reality, but all of these things don't just come out of nowhere. It's not like you're saying that, I'm seeing a pink princess in the clouds.
Yeah, it comes from something.
So you're seeing some stimuli, but then it's kind of like it just goes a little bit too far.
Yeah. So after I was recovering a bit, I went to some like recovery workshops and like groups, and they would explain how psychosis is like when you have like a cup of stress, and basically the cup just overflows.
Wow.
They teach you about managing that stress, to not let it happen again. Like, don't let your cup overflow.
You mentioned like THC. What do you think about THC or marijuana or weed? Why were you using it before? Is it something that you still do and would still recommend, or what are your thoughts around that?
At the time, I didn't want to believe that it was purely due to my THC consumption.
Okay.
I still don't think it was purely due to that, but I do see how that destabilized me, where obviously it's altering your brain chemistry. So especially with prolonged use, because I was smoking for years, and it was very much a coping mechanism for me. Obviously, where I was dealing with a lot of anxiety, it did help, but it was definitely not the best method, because obviously dependency, and I did, even though there's this whole thing where it's like, you can't be addicted. And okay, maybe like I get that, like as a chemical thing, like marijuana is not addictive, but the high is addictive. The feeling that you get from it is very much addictive, because a lot of the time I would just prefer to be high.
With all conditions, there's a genetic element, like what you were already predisposed to, and then there's environmental factors, so like stress or drugs or something like this. And I think that different people need to think about what type of person they are, because maybe, I don't know if you have friends who probably maybe smoke the same or more than you but are completely fine. Would you say that that's the case?
Yeah.
But then you yourself, it's kind of like you just have to make a decision for yourself, and is this adding or taking away from my well-being?
Yeah.
Am I dependent on this, or how it makes me feel? Can I survive with or without it? Yeah.
I think if you're using anything to cope, it's gonna be unhealthy most of the time, unless it's like something like gym.
But what do people think at home? Maybe comment down below whether you think that there are healthy or unhealthy coping mechanisms, or if just anything can become unhealthy.
Because I mean, breathing can be a coping mechanism.
Yeah.
And how can that be unhealthy?
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
And I feel like that's what actually helps me most at the gym, because I'm focusing on my breathing.
Amazing. So thank you so much for opening up about that and being so honest with your experience. In terms of then treatments, or before we go on to treatment and like recovery and things, you mentioned a little bit about with the family having to care for you and how that was traumatic for probably both you and them. And you are also South Asian. You can tell them where you come from. Did your family and friends coming from that background, was there any like barriers or anything that they understood more or less because of being Asian and things?
So half Pakistani, half Burmese. Like my parents both came to the country when they were very young.
Yeah. Okay.
So my mum came when she was 5, and my dad came when he was 11. So they're very much
British.
Yeah, we actually had a doctor who was Indian and female, and young. Just being able to relate, she was very much aware of my uncomfortableness with being on medication. Like, you know, she pointed me in directions that could help, that were medicinal,
yeah.
Like yoga, and she directed me to different types of yoga she was able to discuss with me too.
Wow.
Because some types of yoga can be quite like ungrounding.
Wow.
Where it wouldn't be best for someone who's detached from reality to go through that. Like even certain breathing techniques and stuff, they can make you, I haven't experienced this in yoga specifically, but I know that some breathing techniques, they can make you feel a bit higher almost, or put you into different consciousnesses.
Most definitely, you transcend. That is so interesting, because literally the last time that I went to hot yoga, I came out of it and I felt giddy, like I had like a head rush. So yeah, it can literally put you into different states of mind. It's
something that a lot of medical professionals might not actually think about, that how powerful other practices besides medicine can actually alter your brain as well.
Wow.
Even something simple as breathing. She directed me, she's let me know that Hatha yoga is very grounding and safe.
I guess the mainstay of treatment that we think of from a medicinal point of view is antipsychotics. And yeah, I guess, did you have to go on, if you're comfortable with sharing, did you have to go on antipsychotics? Are you still on them and whatever?
Yeah, so
olanzapine, quetiapine.
Olanzapine.
Okay.
It's not that I don't agree with medication for mental health, but I wanted to avoid it for myself.
Why?
I've just heard so much about side effects.
Okay.
And not only that, but I didn't want, and this might sound, what's the word, like counterintuitive, because I was smoking weed. But I didn't want something else to alter my back. That sounds so silly, because I was smoking so much. But
I think this is my thing that I don't understand, because so many patients, for example, might be in pain. I offer them paracetamol or a painkiller, and they say, oh no, I don't want, like, there's so many, like, it's like the same way I see it, as that you've got a broken leg and you're like, no, I don't want to put a cast around it. But it's not that you're relying on the drug. It's just that this drug, we are using it to help you at the time. We've got technology, we've got science where that then, you know, if you can go on certain medication, so if you're like depressed, you can go on an antidepressant. Not that the antidepressant itself will allow you to get better. And so, for example, I've been on antidepressants before. I talk about it in somewhere on my YouTube, and I just found it as that my mood was so low that I saw it as like, so imagine if I had broken my ankle, that I still need to do physio to get those muscles and the ankle better, but the antidepressant I saw it as paracetamol, so that I could then engage with physio. And I see it the same with like antidepressants, is that you might be so low and just not interested and disengaged, that you might just need that little bit of like a push so that you can then engage with the actual work of, you know, therapy or meeting up with friends and stuff like that. So it's always interesting when, I don't know, as a society in general, most people feel that medications are somewhat of a something to avoid, and I'm not sure why.
I don't know if I can really explain my thinking behind that, because I think differently now. Because even though, like I was opposed to being on medication at first, and when it came down to it, I didn't have a choice. And I see where I needed it at the time.
Okay.
And I think it was necessary to help stabilize me, like you said, where obviously, like, I think with psychosis, in terms of the chemicals behind it, like, it's very much like overstimulation and too much dopamine in the brain.
Mm-hmm.
So I needed something to bring that down so that I could then heal, like come back to sanity.
Okay.
And then I think I went against their wishes though, because they were saying they wanted me to be on it for a year.
Okay.
And I think I didn't want to be on it for the whole year. See, that's why I understand your point, because it seems silly now why I just didn't want to be on it for that long, but then again, actually being on it feels different.
Okay, yeah, that's true actually, because it's easy for me to be like, just take the medication, but all the medications have side effects. They can make you feel a certain type of way. Sometimes they can make you feel a bit more like numb.
Because I was feeling side effects where I could, I'd had a lot of water retention.
Okay, yeah.
And I wasn't 100% feeling myself, but then also being on medication, sometimes you don't know if it's just you and what you've been through, or if it's the medication, which is hard to tell. But then it's reducing the amount of dopamine in my brain. So normal things that I would do, like exercise, or I got into skating a lot just before that. So when I was skating, I wasn't experiencing the same joy or even reward. The reward from it. So everything just felt numb, and I couldn't experience, like now I can find joy in the littlest of things, where like I love nature and just being outside hearing the birds, like it feels amazing. But at the time, I remember I couldn't feel that. Like it was there, but I couldn't feel it. So I just felt like it wasn't worth being here, because I couldn't feel anything.
Okay.
And I thought I had messed up my brain too much, which was kind of heavy. So
wow. Okay, well, thank you for sharing that. You think the healthcare system failed you in any way?
In America, yeah, definitely.
Okay.
It was only when my dad flew over and spoke with the board of doctors. They only agreed to let me out if he could get me on a plane that same day. So they basically just wanted me out of the country so that I wasn't their problem.
Oh, yeah.
The English healthcare system, they were a lot better. But then again, the second time it happened, it's your fault. But it's like, obviously the first episode they said was drug induced, and then I've carried on using cannabis, and then I've had another episode. So it's like, if I have another one after that, because I've still used cannabis after that, it's like, how can they keep treating someone for the same thing when they haven't stopped their drug use for the drug-induced psychosis? But then again, addiction is a disease.
Yeah, exactly.
So
yeah, addiction is a disease, and I think that is one thing that that is important for us to highlight, is that nobody, as we said before, drugs are used as a form of like coping or escapism. Like, it's not, you didn't just wake up one day and just decide, well, even whatever reason somebody gets into drugs or whatever, it then actually alters your brain chemistry. It alters, like, dependence is no like joke, and it's not voluntary. It's a medical condition, it's an illness that the patient does not have. It's like saying, if your ankle is unstable and then, oh well, you kept on cycling and now your ankle is broken again, you wouldn't say that.
They signed me up with a cannabis recovery group.
Okay, amazing.
That would where I found they really did understand. There was like group sessions on Zoom with other people going through similar stuff. I could tell that the person leading it had also had his own experiences with it, which helped. And there was no pressure, and there was no judgment. Yeah.
The last question is, do you think psychosis is a taboo because of its perceived spiritual connotation? And this one is an interesting one. And you know, we've talked about like yoga, and now you're very much into spirituality, and that is what your whole like page is about, and that's also what your YouTube/podcast is about as well. So I feel like we should save that for part 2, where we can go deeper into maybe like your second episode of psychosis, the recovery of it, and what you've learned in terms of from a spiritual lens. I think that would be a really interesting conversation. Okay, but thank you so much for watching to the end of the video. Tanya, is there anything that you would like to say to anybody who might be, you know, earlier on in their mental health journey, just to give them hope?
There is a light at the end of the tunnel, as hard as it might seem, and as hard as you sometimes get lost in that tunnel. There is a light at the end, so keep going. And yeah, look out for more content from me, because I'm trying to create a safe space online where, for me, I know when I was going through psychosis, I was up late on YouTube looking at other people who had experienced similar things. So yeah, that's coming soon. And yeah, if anybody has any more questions, you can always message me on Instagram.
And I'll be leaving that all in the description box below.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for watching the video. Like if you liked it, comment down below anything new you've learned, and please subscribe, because we're trying to get to 1K, and I know that we can do it. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye. And in terms of just the symptoms of like psychosis, we split them up into positive and negative. And this isn't like positive and negative in terms of good and bad, but positive are the symptoms where it's added on to your normal functioning and personality. So for example, hallucinations, delusions, disorganized behavior, and thinking. And then the negative is what is taken away from what is your usual. So that will be anhedonia, which is when you can't enjoy the things you used to, social withdrawal, and apathy, which is where you don't really care about things that are going on around you, and a decline in your cognitive function. So this could be like a bit of memory deficits or slowed thinking, and things like that.